Hello, everybody, and welcome to Economics with the Honorable David M. Walker. David may be joining us toward the end of the show because he's on an airplane. So he texted me and said, look, I might show up if the airplane lands on time. And then we're both heading off to San Francisco to speak in Palo Alto at the end of this week, which will be very interesting in a group called CO Club Global. But this week, of course, we have some very interesting topics that we're going to go over. One is the debt limit and the U.S. Constitution, how it relates to the debt limit. So let's bring in our panelist from Modern Investing. We have Sasha Starr. Sasha, oh, good, I can hear you. I wasn't able to hear you earlier today, and I just want to make sure we can hear you from Canada. And also we have from the United States, Lee Newton Rhodes, who's also a CPA, and he may have some thoughts on this as well. Because we're all going over the debt limit, which is a big thing in the US, because the question becomes what happens if the United States defaults on its debt and it doesn't pay the interest on the $31 trillion worth of debt out there. And what gets me is the 31 trillion number. If you follow numbers at all, I think the United States, we're really math challenged. We tend to ignore it. But let's look at all the mortgages in the United States. Everybody thinks, oh, well, own a house, have a mortgage, own a house, have a mortgage. Everybody that owns houses that has mortgages, you total them all up. The total is 11 trillion, okay, which is a big number. If you total all the United States debt, I borrowed money to spend on this program, borrowed money to spend on that program. I didn't pay it back because we're the United States of America. It totals not 11 trillion. It totals $31 trillion. Okay, it's a staggering amount. And what gets me is the media, how they're not serious about it. The American public isn't serious about it. Keep kicking the can down the road. The media is horrible about it. They'd rather talk about transgender and LBGT. I'm tired of listening to LBGT. Every time you listen to LBG, whatever, they should bring up the national debt. Okay. In other words, okay, now let's talk about the national debt because it affects everybody in the United States. And it seems to me that the Social Security, which is broke basically, and so is Medicare, we're going to go use the American public taxpayer to pay it. How can they do it when they're completely out of money? So I think we have some serious problems there. But in the short term, there's this. And I just want to flash it up there because when I heard this on the media, when I heard David Walker talk about it, I know it's important. When I hear the media talk about it, I know they don't know what they're talking about. So David Walker talked about the 14th Amendment, Article 4. Now, when the president addressed this issue, he goes, I don't want to talk about it. Seriously. It was like, oh my God, I don't want to bring this one up, which tells me we have to bring it up because the Congress doesn't want to talk about it. The president talk about it. But here's what it says, and I made it short so everybody can read it. You can read it yourself if you want to. This is the 14th Amendment, Section 4. It says the validity of the public debt, then it goes, including pensions and other benefits, shall not be questioned. The real question that we have, and I'm sure the Supreme Court will deal with, and it shows the farce that they have in our political system. We have this debt limit. Oh, you can't go beyond the debt limit, okay? Which is just an act of Congress. It's not a constitutional provision. And the question I have for the panel is this law unconstitutional? In other words, as written, if we look at the Constitution of the United States. Now, this is very important. Jatovia is just.
I'm sorry, Nick.
Yeah.
What? When was this amendment passed?
145 years ago. It was.
And when was the Federal Reserve started? About 100 years ago?
I think about 100 years ago, something like that, 1920s. Why?
Maybe the Federal Reserve is the one that's causing the problem.
Well, it's a law that says that the debt limit. There's a
no, I understand that. Were it not for the Federal Reserve, maybe we would not be in this problem.
Well, I'm not sure if it's the Federal Reserve or it's congressional spending. But the thing is, I would say, yeah, you have both of them working together in harmony to destroy the American economy, which China's just going laughing, and rightfully so. But But the thing is, what gets me is how the media and our politicians both brush off the Constitution of the United States of America. And I'm including Joe Biden, Republicans, and everybody involved. This is what the Constitution says. And by the way, David Walker is one of the few people who actually tell the truth. And he's not a good politician because he'll tell the truth. I'm sorry. You have to lie and then you're a good politician, apparently. Okay, but if you go to the 14th Amendment, anybody can do this, Section 4. And I had to do this because I'm going, David, are you sure you're right on this one? It says the validity of the public debt, and that goes including pensions and other benefits, shall not be questioned, which can be interpreted that you can't just repudiate the debt and not pay it. Now we have Congress in their infinite wisdom, which their laws do not override the Constitution, passing a rule that if you reach the debt ceiling, we can't go beyond that and pay our bills. Now the question becomes this, and this may reach the Supreme Court of the United States someday. Is the debt limit ceiling even constitutional? Now, it's not unusual for Congress to pass unconstitutional laws. It's just something that takes place on a semi-routine battle. But what they're doing is they're feeding, along with the media, the American public, that there's this big negotiation going on the debt ceiling limit, and that even Janet Yellen, well, we could default. It'll be horrible for America if we default on our national debt. So if they do, wouldn't it be that Congress and the president have both violated the Constitution of the United States? Anyway, I'm leaving it to the panel of this judicious group that we have assembled here to figure this out. So I'll start with Sasha. You're in Canada, so you have no skin in this game. But if the United States defaults on the debt, then it could have great financial implications throughout the market. What are your thoughts on this? Or do we just have another situation where they're playing games with us in Washington, D.C.?
I have several thoughts on the subject, and let's start with this idea of debt limit, which you just said rightly so, that it's not part of the Constitution. So it's completely imaginary number or even idea at all that there should be such thing as a debt limit, because it's not part of Constitution, and it's not part of American fabric and American way of life to consider on themselves. It's not that China or Germany insisted that United States, must have a debt ceiling. You cannot go far from certain number. No, it's American imposed on themselves. Now we're coming to theatrics of that. All this is nothing but a political show. There is no substance in it. It's a pure political show where the Republicans are trying to pave the way so there will be default or close situation to a default, so they can unload everything on Biden. Biden failed to do this, Biden didn't do that, and so on and on, to clear a path for somebody like Donald Trump, the human garbage, really, that's all what he is, to become a next president. That will be the end of America, not the debt ceiling here and there and so on. So today, Republican Party of America, it's the biggest enemy of America. That's 100% true, and that has to be outlawed, period.
Okay, well, thank you for that political statement. I will bring in Jatovi. What are your thoughts on this debt limit when you read the Constitution of the United States? And by the way, the reason I put this out here, anybody can Google it today. The 14th Amendment, Section 4, the validity of public debt shall not be questioned. Yet, they're negotiating this in Congress like we're going to question it. So what are your thoughts on this one?
So as I just posted, in 1939 is when Congress started to create the full-blown, well, in 1917 is when the Second Liberty Bond Act of 1917 was the one that gave the Treasury much more flexibility in managing the debt. In 1939 is when the Congress decided they were going to start utilizing the debt limit. So the debt limit itself has always been there since, I guess, evidently since 1939. And yes, I think that's where the question came into play when Biden had mentioned that he might utilize the 14th Amendment. He didn't really push that he was going to do that, but he said that that was an option, which if we're discussing that now, Nick, it sounds like that is something that can be done where the debt, which honestly it should be, is that, hey, if we've already spent the money, the argument over we need to cut from the spending, well, that's not happening right now. I hate McCarthy's analogy. Well, if the credit card, that's dumb. That's not really a great analogy. The fact is the money is spent. You have to pay the bill. You can't talk to you can't talk to the light man, and the light man says, well, you already spent this money. I need my check right now. I don't care about what you're going to do next month. I need my check right now. That's what's happening. So we have to pay the bill. The discussion on cutting spending and curbing everything else, that can happen afterwards. What Sasha's saying, as extreme as it may sound, is true. The debt has never been an issue anytime the Republican Party is in power, even though they're the ones who are spending more so than any other president. The presidents, and this is just, these are facts. We can all look them up. Under the Democrat presidents, the debt limit the cut from the spending actually goes down. And Trump spent 25% of all of the presidents combined, 25% more. So all this stuff happens, but we don't hear the yelling and everything else about the debt under a Republican president or whenever the Republicans are in charge, because the Republican Party is phenomenal at messaging. That is their greatest asset. They make everything out to be a particular thing, and people run with it and ride with it. For example, right now we're having a debt limit argument. We've spent the money. We cannot sit here and say, well, I'm not going to pay that bill until we decide we can't do that. The debt limit has to be paid. And then, okay, you can discuss next month what has to go, or what we can cut from, and maybe figure out what we can tax, so on and so forth, all the other stuff. But what's been paid has to be paid. Holding it hostage because you want, that is antithetical to everything the Republican Party has said that they stood for.
Yeah, Jacoby, thank you very much. Can you do me a favor for the people who are watching who are not accountants or know what's going on? Congress approves the budget. The executive branch spends the money. How do we get where executive branch or government spends more than the budget was approved for? How do we get in that problem?
Here's an easy analogy for that. Now, how much money did you spend on your light bill last month?
I think I have only budgeted $100.
$100.
So that means after $100,
have you ever gone over the budget that you spent on your light bill? Yes.
So that's the analogy that I could not control because I was not monitoring my spending.
But that's not. I don't think that's what's happening. What's happening is they passed the budget in 2023 with a Democratic-controlled Congress. Now we have a Republican-controlled Congress, and they want to reduce the budget to save money. So they want to basically amend the 2023 budget, when what they should do is go to the 2024 budget in October. So what we're seeing, and they call this in bankruptcy a cram down, what the Republican Congress want to do, and this part I do agree with them, is to reduce the vast amount of spending in 2023. I do agree with reducing the spending, but they can't do it in 2023. They need to do it in 2024. So why are they doing it in 2023? Because it's over. I mean, I don't like what Biden did.
Nick, would you say it's over? Has all the money been spent already?
No, but it's been allocated already.
Yeah, it's spent.
So the thing, it's already in the system to be allocated. All the budgets are allocated. It's like chess. Oh, I made a bad move on the board. Sasha, I want to take my move back. Okay, will they let you do that? No. they made a bad move on the board. You can't take the move back, but we can make a change. If the Republicans want to make a change, do it in 2024, because I agree with them. Spending is out of control. I agree they need to rein in the budget, but this is not the way to do it. You see what I mean? And they're not presenting fairly the facts to the American public at all, and the media is not doing it either. It's just basically disgusting. So, Kim, you haven't spoken yet, so we'll bring it to you.
They spent the money years ago. We're just been playing catch up for years and years. Why not cut the spending this year and next year and the year after? Like David keeps saying, let's, stop the bleeding, get that done, do it now. When you've got somebody in the ER and they're bleeding to death, you just don't sit there and let them keep bleeding. You stop the bleeding and then you work on the problem. And, David has presented some ideas. This is his experience, none of ours, but we've got experience in proper budgeting in our own home expenses. So we know better than to spend money we don't have. We all have credit cards and we might use those, and we might borrow money, right, to buy bigger items like a house or pay for student debt. Student education. But the problem that really lies is that we really don't have any more spending room. There's none. So we need to reel it in, close off the arteries and just fix the problem. And, like DeSanto is saying, he wants to ban people from being able to see his travel records. I scream as a public person in this United States that no public official, no government official or employee should be able to ban their travel records of any kind. I think what they're doing is criminal. They are the biggest criminals in our country, and we need to clean house and start over.
Kim, wait a sec. Don't you forget that our United States previous president, Donald Trump, he ruled for 4 years without showing his income tax returns.
Just because one person does it doesn't make it right. And no,
it's not right. But you start right from the top.
Don't jump off the cliff.
You have to start from the top. You have to. If everybody will comply and everybody will show.
Sasha, I'm not here to justify what Trump did, but as far as I know, there's no legal requirement.
Yes, there is.
It's
to show your tax returns.
He said it was
I agree with you, Kim. He did say that. I'm not justifying him going back on his word. As far as I know, to run for the presidency, there's an age requirement and a citizenship requirement in terms of being born here. Nothing about tax returns.
But Lee, the issue is every president prior, every single one.
There's precedent. I agree with you, Chitovi.
Let me finish my statement. Every president, yes, you are correct. There is no legal requirement for you to show your tax returns. However, every president prior has shown their tax returns out of transparency, public interest, and because it is important to the voters.
I agree with you.
Trump did not hid information. Now he's setting precedent for his party, hence the reason there's so many people in the GOP trying to hide stuff. DeSantis is one. There's also
but obviously, Jatovia, it's not that important to the public because they wouldn't have elected him on the first go round.
Lee,
I don't know
Lee,
sadly,
I said that there's no legal requirement.
There's no legal requirement.
Hold on. But there is also saying that the Department of Justice cannot charge a sitting president. Is that in Constitution? Is that a law? Is it written anywhere? It's an opinion. And because of that opinion, Trump was allowed to rule for 4 years. Nobody, even Mueller's commission, they could not follow the money. They could not go on tracks and show how he was paid by Russians, how he was Putin's puppet. He could not prove it because you have to follow the money. And you see, he was
one thing One thing
emails.
Jacoby brought up, and I had to fact check this, not with you because I heard it before, but it's true. And this one is a shocker. 25% of all national debt was incurred under the Trump administration. I am not kidding.
Yeah.
And I'm just
Can you send that to me, Nick?
Oh, well, you can Google it and you can look at the
Yeah.
sources. On
And
it.
the
I mean,
same-
it's
Nick, what was the date of that?
it's
As of his,
just during his administration. Now realize.
so would it be true as of today?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, you can go back historically and look at his administration for 4 years, and they do analysis on that. Total the entire national debt, and 25% of all of the national debt actually occurred under the Trump administration. Now, part of it was he was using the money for the COVID. So the thing is, remember, they printed and they sent a bunch of money out and incurred a lot of national debt. But it's almost humorous that this actually that the number was that large in the Trump administration. But also realize that Donald promised that if you reduce taxes, the GDP would increase so dramatically it would cover all his national debt through his tax reduction program. And just like the border fence, that did not happen. What happened is the national debt increased and the GDP did not increase.
Yeah, but wait a sec. What the
Funded
whole idea?
to take care of it. So
What-
what happens is basically he just lied to everybody about the border. He lied to everybody about this. And what really gets me, and this is somebody we should really look at, is CNN is supporting Trump. And the reason why they gave him FaceTime, they should give him no FaceTime. He got a free hour commercial. His ratings boomed, by the way, for CNN. But this is how bad everybody should boycott CNN. CNN is horrible. They are.
Question.
This is a media whore company. Seriously. Anyway, that's my
one very
stop on
quick
CNN.
question to you. You're saying
Plus
that
back
Trump
potatoes.
lowered the taxes. Why would you lower the taxes in a country when 80% of the people cannot pay any taxes at all, and the other 20 people are tax evaders? So what's the idea about lowering the taxes?
The top 1% don't evade.
Evaders. They actually do pay a lot. The top 20%
they
do pay a
avoid.
lot of taxes.
They
They don't
avoid.
evade, they avoid. I've been to
I'm
all of
away,
those
by the way.
classes.
A
I
lot
take
of them
the
away
class.
because there is a very fine line between avoiding taxes and evading taxes. So
Right, but I
people
take the
evade taxes
classes.
by saying that
perfectly
they are
legal.
avoiding taxes, but
They're avoiding.
there is no
Right.
Yeah.
difference.
You're right, though. You're so right,
Well,
Sal.
they
You
put
are
tax
so
The
right.
idea.
One word.
This
One
is
word makes
where
all the difference.
this is where the GOP, again, the Republican Party is phenomenal at messaging. And that's why that's why trickle down economics has changed its name so many times. We're still utilizing that trickle down economic style. Basically, you cut the taxes for the rich, and they're going to create all the jobs for everybody else. The money will trickle down. That never happens. It doesn't. Money gets spent elsewhere. The rich people avoid taxes, just as Kim points out. All this stuff does not trickle down, so it blows a hole in the debt.
Right.
Oh, well, they're wanting to take your money and put it to somebody or share it with somebody else. Well, when you cut taxes, you know what's happening? It's shifting wealth from the low income all the way up to the upper income. That's what happens. Money gets moved around regardless. That's the way taxes works. We have to understand and realize that taxes truthfully are important to our society. That is actually one of the things that built our society. If you look about, we want to go back to the golden years. We want to make America great again. Well, you know what the tax rate was back then? It was much higher than it is now. It wasn't until Nixon and Reagan started to get in. And when Reagan cut the taxes even down to, what was it? 20 some odd percent, he realized that the debt was going up so high, he had to jump taxes back up. So we have to realize that taxes are truthfully what helped build this country and helped out the middle class, because we could pay for things. We have an older society now. And when we're complaining that, oh, well, we got to cut education, we got to cut these, we have to throw people off of SNAP, like as if SNAP is some really ungodly amount of money. But no, we have to throw kids and mothers off of SNAP programs because we can't feed them. But hey, let's do some corporate welfare. That's where the money is. We're still giving out, what is it, $4 billion for for subsidies on oil and so on and so forth. Why are we giving $4 billion on a company that just made its highest earning ever, which was over, what was it, 100 and some odd $1 billion? Each Exxon Mobil made some ungodly amount, but yet they're getting $4 billion in subsidies. Why? They don't need it.
No, they have good lobbyists.
Yeah, that's exactly why. Our healthcare system is just ridiculous.
Well, if you look at the healthcare system, it's like 20% now of our GDP goes to healthcare, and it's not getting better. And if you look at the government, it's about 20% of our GDP going to government workers.
What gets caught
That's
in the
not
middle?
getting better.
It's
So
Hey,
we
Nick,
got businesses
Nick,
built on
everybody
this.
who's working for a living is basically
but
screwed.
Nick, along the same lines, and hopefully he doesn't mind me bringing this up since it was one of his
Go for it, Mark.
goals and everything in that space and all along those lines. And to Kim's comment earlier, is it time for us to do a total cleaning of the whole government system? Maybe clean out not just the Congress, because a lot of the Congress people are lining their own pockets, but Lee, I think on one of the polls was asking whether the FBI was politicizing people, and as I pointed out to him in my response, it's been politicizing since its inception pretty much. So definitely that is an organization along with the IRS and a number of others that probably could be restructured, if not totally gotten rid of in some ways and everything. So I was wondering, is it time for us to maybe have a restructure of government in general?
Well, and also I want to point out to Nick that the data that I pulled up, which shows a chart of every president, they also do the due diligence. I think Trump was over 40% of the problem that we have today. So, I think the best president we ever had was Andrew Jackson. When I reviewed the data, he was the one who had negative debt. But, we got to look at who's been in office. And this is what I tell people: don't blame the current administration, even though I want to blame them for a lot of things. But you have to realize that things were caused in previous administrations, not even just Trump's, but in previous, that kept trickling down into the current administrations that had to be fixed, like COVID. Even though we're over COVID, all of the way they behaved and dealt with the problem. Don't forget about the millions and millions of deaths in the United States that did not need to occur. All of the problems that occurred then trickled over. It takes time to clean up a spilled milk mess like that. And, Trump made some horrible decisions. I'm not even going to go to his defense that no other president has ever had to deal with this. He's the president. He should have hired the pandemic team and fixed it. But the thing is that we incurred huge debt. He allowed PPP loans, of which the Republican Party received millions and millions and millions of dollars. Each of us only got $1,700. Each of the middle classers and poor people got $1,700 each. They got millions of dollars that were forgiven. And they were like, let's just write them $1,700 and they'll ignore what we're writing ourselves. And they're going to jump up and down and thank us because they got $1,700. But that PPP loan was supposed to go pay your salaries and people's salaries. And then they were supposed to be forgiven if they did. But I assure you that majority of them probably didn't pay employee salaries. So I'm just saying our debt was caused greatly by what happened because of COVID. It trickled over like spilled milk would spill over. It just keeps trickling until we put a stop to it. We need to put a tourniquet on it, and we need to stop it. We need to stop behaving like children, and we need to unite and work together. And what we have is a two-party system, the left and the right. One party does laws that are more benefit for the poor. The other does more laws that are benefit for the rich. But who's doing the laws that are a benefit for the people who actually pay for both? Neither of them.
Neither.
Why are we so idiots to not elect the one president that would be for the middle class people? Why are we not doing that? Why are we split? Why did we allow them to split us between these two? And
Because they don't get any
I just-
attention on CNN.
Right.
And
I
the
have
thing
to
is,
disagree on that.
they're going to put Trump on CNN, but Lee Newton Rhodes gets no exposure on CNN because
I have to.
CNN is pandering to the parties. No one.
Well,
Nick, I'm working on that.
I have to
Carolina.
disagree
it's
on that.
Trump. They're,
Did you
I
get-
don't
did you get a
even
call
think
from
Republican,
CNN,
they're
Lee?
Trump.
Did you get a
Not
call?
today.
Oh,
Tomorrow. I'm open for tomorrow.
Yeah. Okay. All right. We'll listen
So I
to
have-
Jacoby.
I have to disagree on that. One's for the rich and one's for the poor. I do agree that yes, the GOP pushes a lot for the rich. I do not agree that the Democrat Party is pushing only for the poor, because a lot of their policies are hitting the middle class more so than they're hitting even the lower class.
I think it's
Because a lot more people are left out in the cold in the lower class than they are than the middle class. If you look at all for example, if you take even the Republican Party calls it Obamacare. Well, if you don't make a particular amount of money, I mean, it's still going to be hard for you to get insurance because it still costs you money even under Obamacare. The best thing that would have happened, that would have worked for anybody in the lower class, is to do a single payer system where it was covered, just like other countries, just like in Canada, just like in Australia, and so on and so forth. Every other country that is, civilized country. But no, we still did a capitalist style insurance setup.
But
where
then,
you
but
have to-
if
if you
you
don't-
review the Obamacare plan, the people who are poor, they get an income
Medicaid?
credit to cover the insurance policy. So
you are
if their
still-
income is below a certain level, the government gives them what they call an income credit, which they have to apply it to their taxes next year. So if you read up on it, and I've helped people apply for it, they have to next year. So say that they get, and the credit's ridiculous. They'll say, well, the insurance is going to cost you $2,000 a month, and we're going to give you $1,500 a month credit. So at the end of the year, you're going to pay, $20-some thousand in tax credits back to us. So that's how that works. That's how
you
Obama
are still penalized. That's
You're
the
penalized.
Thing.
And the poor people are being punished for
That's
using
why-
it by having to write. So it is
That's
against,
my
I
point.
mean, right.
That's my
but
point. My point is that it's working for the middle class, but it's
not
not
really,
working
because the
for-
middle class pays exuberant fees for that.
is
Exuberant.
that-
We have to pay the full rate. We have
Is
to pay.
that-
We're not getting a break on medical benefits at all.
Is that a fault of the law, or is that a fault of the insurance companies?
That's a fault of Obamacare pandering to the insurance companies.
Why is it not a fault of the insurance companies? But yet you're saying the pandering.
I think we need to just get rid of the insurance companies. We've allowed, with
so that is
Obamacare, we've
where-
allowed 3 to take over the
Again,
country.
That is my point.
We need
My
to get rid of
point
them.
is
We need to
the
go
laws- the laws themselves that
Universal
we're
health.
talking about affect more so the middle class. They may hit the lower middle, but they're leaving out a whole group of individuals that are struggling. And that's where the lower class is left out in the cold for a lot of the laws. But I wouldn't say I couldn't vote GOP at this moment for any of them, not only because but I'm taking out of their, the personalities and so on and so forth. Their policies themselves leave out more people, because if you're saying they're pushing towards the rich, which we agree on, there's a small percentage of people that are rich. There's a giant percentage of people in the middle class and lower class. That's who I think more.
And that's
people
who we
should be
need to
advocating.
vote for, is someone who runs on a ticket and policies for the middle class, not for the rich, and not for. We need a middle.
That is your
class
Democrat
candidate.
Party
No,
right
no
now.
labels, no left, no right, no no Democrat. No,
Jacoby, you don't think the Democrats are just as guilty taking lobbyist money?
I think they are.
They take some lobbyist money, but in
They don't
terms of
take as
just
much.
no, not even close.
They don't take as much. They're all on the
question.
take, Lee.
Hey, quick
I
question
mean,
for everybody.
and don't get me wrong, yeah, politicians, yeah, they'll
Yeah.
pull off, and
And-
yeah, some will do
and-
this and some will do that, and yeah, each party has their bad individuals. Each part, I'm not saying anybody is saintly and nobody has any problems, but the Republican Party is really bad right now. The Republican Party has so many problems. When the leader of your party is Marjorie Taylor Greene, don't even say it's McCarthy. Don't even say it's Trump. Right now, she holds the gavel behind McCarthy. She's actually held the gavel on the House floor. She is the leader of that party right now. That's
Well,
bad.
it's a sad
Let's
commentary.
start focusing on promoting a party that's not affiliated either way. Let's start focusing on a party and try to promote it so that the middle class man has a party that's for them. Totally. And then it will bleed either way. It will flow up and down. And I think that's what
Yeah.
we need to focus on, is taking care of us, not taking care of the rich, not taking care of the poor, but taking care of us.
Well, why don't we start with this one? Okay, healthcare in the United States right now is 20% of the GDP, which means basically 20% of everything you make at some point in your life will go to healthcare costs. When was the last time you saw the media address this issue? I'll start with Lee. The major media, not obviously our crazy media. Pod TV is crazy. When did you last see major media address this issue? Lee.
The media doesn't address any issue when it comes to budgeting and spending. I mean, it's to their advantage that money is spent on this.
Okay, so you're telling me you haven't seen anything?
I haven't seen anything where they're concerned.
20% of your life they're ignoring. Let's go to Sasha. When did you see the media in the United States discuss healthcare costs?
That issue, Nick, as you well know, doesn't make money to anybody discussing it. It's
Okay.
a waste of time.
Bingo.
So,
But
okay, so
I want to tell you something very
20% of everything you
when
make.
people think
20% of
about
your
the
bloody
third
life.
party, I can tell you what I see is sooner or later, and I think much sooner than we think, there will be another populist politician who will say that he will weaponize IRS to extract taxes from anybody making more than $250,000 a year. Period. And the taxation will be such that people, and there will be, for example, a threat of a not death sentence, okay, maybe it's too much, but I think 4 or 5 years in jail, that's good enough for people, especially most of these people are old people, say over 60, maybe even over 70. So for them, spend 4 years in jail is not very attractive proposition. So the tax department, the IRS, they will become, even without changing any laws substantially, but closing some loopholes, they will start collect billions of dollars, and America will get rid of its debt very, very quickly. This is very opposite of what you're discussing here as to lower the taxes or even more lower the taxes. No, you don't need to lower taxes. You need to understand how to collect the taxes. That's all.
Okay, well, we have been joined by the Honorable David M. Walker, the former Comptroller General of the United States. I want to bring back the main issue that we're here for, because when major media didn't cover this really, the 14th Amendment, and when they asked President Biden, what do you think about that? He goes, I don't want to discuss that. And he moved on. I'm going like, wait a minute. This is a important constitutional provision, and you're the President of the United States, and you don't want to discuss it? And I'm just showing you the 14th Amendment for the viewers. 14th Amendment, Section 4. It's shortened just a little bit so that you can read yourself. The validity of the public debt, ... shall not be questioned. So wait a minute. Why are we screwing, David? Why are we screwing around with this debt limit stuff when we have to pay our bloody debts? The Constitution says so. What's your thoughts?
Well, first, I'm at the West Palm Beach Airport, so there are people around me. I'll try to cover as much as I can with the amount of time that I have. There are only two things that were guaranteed by under the 14th Amendment. Number one, Treasury public debt So it's debt held by the public. It's not individual payables to individual companies, things of that nature. It's the debt to the public. So Treasury securities, in other words.
Mhm.
And then the second thing that was guaranteed by the 14th Amendment was Union Civil War pensions and bounties. Now, we've paid all the Union Civil War pensions and bounties. And so, therefore, the only thing that's left is Treasury debt. That means it's the highest priority with regard to payments because it's guaranteed by the Constitution. And it's the only thing that's guaranteed by the Constitution. Therefore, when you hit the debt ceiling limit, you have to pay those payments. But in order to pay those payments, you have to cut something else. So there's no free lunch. The idea that you can ignore the 14th Amendment and pay all your bills on time is, number one, not only wrong, it's unconstitutional. And I think if Biden tried to do that, he would, A, face a court case that ultimately would get decided by the Supreme Court. But secondly, he would almost assuredly, along with the Secretary of the Treasury, be subject to impeachment proceedings. Why have a debt ceiling limit at all if allegedly everything is guaranteed by the 14th Amendment? That doesn't make any sense. Plus, the 14th Amendment also says that consistent with law. Well, guess what? That's right, wrongly is a law. Now, you've heard me say before, I believe that debt ceiling ought to be repealed and replaced with a constitutional debt to GDP limit that is operationalized through law, but is part of the Constitution. So current and future Congresses must comply because past statutory approaches, including like the debt ceiling, have failed to promote fiscal responsibility and sustainability. And we need to desperately.
Yes, which brings us to the point that I didn't understand when I listened to Janet Yellen was going, well, we may have to default on our debt. And I was going like, but you can't default on your debt. So why would she make statements like that? Isn't she the Secretary of Treasurer?
I hate to say it, Nick, a lot of ignorance.
Yeah, but she should know better than to make a statement like that.
Well, there's a lot of BS. Okay, I mean, there's a lot of BS. So I apologize. And a person, but you become a political hack. I mean, part of this administration, because she's, part of the president's cabinet. It should have it. Excessive spending. Rules should be put in the ash can of history. But look, there's one and only one plan that should be politically Problem Solvers Caucus by proposal to the president. Break Speaker McCarthy needs to embrace that only bipartisan plan. If they do, we can avoid this whole thing. And what it does, the need to try to address the structural deficit, it doesn't go into specific spending cuts. And that's what the president doesn't want to do. The president does not want to negotiate over specific spending part of the debt. Fine, but the that's on an unconditional basis when our finances have deteriorated dramatically, and now the Congressional Budget Office is expecting a $2 trillion deficit this year. That's just unacceptable, and so compromise is not.
Okay, we can barely hear you. You come in and out, unfortunately. Okay, so we're looking at the we're looking at the national debt, and of course there was another issue that just came before the U.S. Supreme Court that people may have missed, but this is actually pretty big. It's under the dormant. They call it the Dormant Commerce Clause. It's the pork producers versus California. If you haven't seen this case, it reached the Supreme Court of the United States, where the Supreme Court of the United States actually favored California that says they don't have to allow imports from states like New York or North Carolina or anywhere unless pigs have at least 24 feet to maneuver around. Okay. And you're going to see that's going to create huge problems
Can I
because other states
intervene
can
on this
enact
one?
issues on that. Yeah, it's kind of
All of our
important
pork
piece of it.
industry was sold off to China, so they own our pork industry here in the United States. So why should we care?
Well, I don't know, but the stats I get is 13% of all pork is consumed by California. And what it does, it opens the floodgates for states like North Carolina to pass laws that say, well, under what they call the Dormant Commerce Clause, which basically if Congress doesn't act, then the state can act, is really what it says. So Congress has an act on pork, so you could. So North Carolina could pass a law saying that we won't allow imports for sweet potatoes unless they're grown organically outside of North Carolina, seriously. And so this
Those are
Supreme
probably
Court
owned by China too. I think they're buying
this
up
Supreme
all
Court
of our farms.
this Supreme Court decision opens up a floodgate. It was recently announced. We covered it in one of our shows, Supreme Court Review, with a professor at University of Oklahoma Law School. I didn't think the ruling would come out that fast. I didn't think it would come out this way because
By the way, that's a
it's
good show if
different
anyone
law.
wants to understand what the Supreme Court is currently doing. It's a
Yeah.
great review. It made
Yeah.
I just listened to it. I didn't even watch it. I just listened it, and it was great.
That was
Yeah.
a very good show. and
Professor
everything.
Carla Pratt does a good job.
I learned
Yeah,
a
she
lot.
does a really great job and definitely learned a lot and everything. By the way, we've decided because we had a meeting of the mind recently and all in that space. So Jacoby and Lee and myself, I'm glad you put us up here. We're going to organize a boycott for the pigs. So like I said, we'll get the pigs together and we'll organize a boycott for the pigs because the pigs need rights as well. Isn't that right, Lee and Jacoby? We did agree that we're going to organize this protest for the pigs, right?
Pigs' lives matter.
Pigs lives.
You do
Yeah.
you, Mark. I'm gonna sit at home. I'm not boycotting for no pig.
We're not boycotting for the pigs.
I don't think my family will either. We eat way too much. But
Don't get me
if
wrong.
they
I like my
knew
bacon.
that all the pig farms were owned by China, they probably would not have had all of the pig pickings that they've had in the past 5 years. But that's just the way we are today. Majority of our farms are being bought up. All of our appliance companies, even though they never changed the outside name, they're all, almost every one of them are owned by China now. So all of them, they're all bought out by Hare, which is owned by China. So, we just need to be a little bit more careful and watch what these laws are doing with the Supreme Court and who are they really impacting? Are they really helping us or are they helping another foreign entity? So we got to pay attention to these things because I don't think even the bill makers know that they, allow the pork industry to be bought out by China or
But
the appliance industry.
Kim, it's not just China. One of the other major industries that we talk about regularly, I know that Nick has brought it up a couple of times, is the pharmaceutical industry. And I can think of at least two pharmaceutical industries that are not owned by China. They're actually owned by European countries. Rhone-Poulenc is actually a French-based company, and GlaxoSmithKline, last time I checked, was British-owned. So definitely there are a lot of countries that are owned in various entities.
Yeah, but I'm talking about what we sustain and eat off of. I'm not too worried about. Well, I am worried about our
You
pharmaceuticals.
need to be worried about the drugs and the pharmaceutical companies too.
But what we eat every day and what we feed our families every day, China had literally destroyed all of their own pig farms with viruses and diseases, and so they came into our country and bought up our pig farms. And I'm sure, I haven't looked lately, but I'm sure they're buying up our cattle and everything else too. So, just it's what we're allowing. But what I fear is when we put laws into place, who do we really benefit when, this is happening on the sidelines? And do they even look into that? Do they even look into who this impacts? And I don't think they do. I don't think they care. I think they care about their own pocket and who's lobbying at the time.
Here's a question. Since everything kind of ties together, everything's really, I hate to say the Forrest Gump line, life is like a big ball of yarn. It really is. So when we're talking about
Oh, it's chocolate.
Chocolates.
well, either one,
A box of chocolate.
whatever it is.
I like chocolate
No,
better
but
than that.
who said life is like a big ball of yarn? Somebody did.
Yeah, somebody with a
Toby
twisted
did.
mind.
Probably did.
Very good.
But if everything is connected, and if we think about it that way, how we're talking about how yes, China does buy up a lot of the pork industry, but also does Mexico. Mexico in 2001 was up 34% was at 34% more than, and China was a little bit below them. But China was at 39 and Mexico was at 25 in 2020. But either way, in our culture and our country today, our country is mainly a service industry country now. We're not producing as much as we used to. Other countries are focused on education and producing more. Could we change that by focusing heavily on education and getting back to producing more? Is that something that could take place and change the economy for the future? Because one of the problems, if you think about how capitalism at its heart is always about growth. There always has to be growth in capitalism.
If you educate people in the right things, if you take the right subjects, I would agree.
And the way our country is set, everything is for sale. That's capitalism.
Well, that's
I mean,
capitalism, and not along that lines. But Kim
I
brought
agree.
up.
I agree.
Kim,
So
Kim brought up
Fill
China.
out
Hold on a
your
second.
fill out your farm, you know, fill
But
out
Kim,
your
hold on a second.
country.
You
that is
brought
our
up China
capitalist
and you
society.
brought up the Chinese buying. But guess what? I wish Sasha was here because actually one of the nations that has
Sasha's
actually
here.
bought up
Sasha's
more
here.
land than actually the Chinese is Canada. So Canada and the European countries have actually bought up more of our farmland than those fine folks from Asia.
So because of all these investments in education and the Chinese government and all, and they put a lot of investment in education. I have to give them that. If we did a similar thing and put more investment in education, could we turn things around here?
Jacoby, what type of education you talking about? Vocational or
I'm
STEM?
talking about education, STEM, vocation. Well, both STEM and vocation. Vocational, we cannot have everybody being it's impossible for everybody to be creating the same thing or being a billionaire and blah, blah, blah. That's impossible. It's never going to happen. There will always be teachers. We're always going to need firemen. We're always going to need farmers. We're always going to need people to do dirty work as well as
Construction, plumbing, electrical.
Exactly.
No,
So
but
vocation
it's beyond vocation. Jacoby
down the pipeline.
Jacoby and Lee, the question I've got is, I remember when I was in school, way back in the ice ages of the 70s and everything, there was an organization called Future Farmers of America. I don't even know if they're active as much as they used to be all in that space, because I do remember a friend of mine did a study of like an art installation around the beaches of North Carolina. And part of the issue was that the people that were living in the beaches did not want to go into the fisherman industry because it's a hard job, it's a hard life, and all in that space. Earlier today, we had a young lady that went and bought up a farm, but she is a rarity in that sense, because a lot of people are wanting to get into fields that are more, what they feel are more lucrative than farming, and are not going into these difficult fields and everything. Because, I mean, if you're a fisherman and you've seen 3 generations of your family fighting the ocean and everything, and you decide you're going to move, a lot of these folks are getting out of those fields.
If we're staying in the whole life is like a ball of yarn, everything is connected. We're talking about, I mean, what you're talking about, that's proven to be a fact. The U.S. will not, when we're talking about undocumented workers, illegal immigration, and all the other stuff, and how the GOP is talking about, oh, well, we're going to just send them back and blah, blah, blah. They're taking all our jobs. Well, you know what? A lot of those individuals end up doing the jobs that we as Americans decide that we're either too good for, don't want to do, too afraid of, from the farm work, from, dealing stuff from different homes to the garbage. I mean, just doing this stuff that we as Americans, for some odd reason, have a stigma against.
Yes.
These individuals are phenomenal individuals, and if we could stop demonizing them and understanding, yes, they should be more than welcome, and we should create a pathway because we do have opportunities for them, and we do have opportunities not only that are wide open that for some odd reason, I'm not going to go out in the field and pick no blueberries. Well, this gentleman right here who's trying to create a new world for his family decided that he will suck it up and do anything for his family. He will take that job. So he should be allowed, go ahead, take it. Or she should be allowed, go ahead, do that job, do the work, help us out, bring in that, help us be better, create your own industry from that. But yeah, that's
So what
I
office
agree
are you
with
running
you,
for,
Toby.
Jacoby? What office are you running for? Are you trying to take Steve's job?
No,
I
He's not gonna
agree
take
with
Steve's
you.
job.
And Jacoby, I want to add something. They not only do the job, but they make it so we can still afford to purchase it because they do it at such a reduced rate. Majority of the time, their employers do not have to cover them with workers' comp, which cost about 30% of everyone's paycheck. A lot of people don't realize your employer, when they employ you, one of the things they are required by law to do in this country, no ifs, ands, or buts, or they get severely punished, is they have to purchase workers' comp. So,
Right.
and Nick, that's about 30%.
It's expensive. Yes,
But
I
Ken,
agree.
speaking of
Ridiculous.
Ken and Nick, speaking of expenses, isn't that part of the?
Real quick, Mark. What you're talking about, Kim, is spot on, and how we sit, and this is another reason why the GOP fights heavily so much for the big business and the rich person, and doesn't even care about the middle class or the lower class. And this is why the GOP gets on my nerves so many times. So
you have a problem with that?
Undocumented. When we talk about undocumented
what your problem
workers and
is.
illegal immigration and all the other things, who doesn't get attacked? The people that are hiring the undocumented worker.
That's right.
When I brought this up years ago, and they continue to turn their heads because do you know who were the first people to bring in undocumented migrant workers? It was the rich people for their house slaves, right? Right? Rich people brought them in from other countries to be their house slaves.
We're job creators, but with that, we have to end the show. So we don't have
There's that trickle down
Thank
economics.
everybody for attending Economics with the Honorable David M. Walker, and we will see you all next week. Take care. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Take care.